everyone hear me? Okay, cool.
Now I'm practicing. Third time.
Now you're good to go.
So hello everybody. Very excited to see such a big interest on talking about Gen AI productivity, change management in the workplace. And I hope we will give you a good insight, because we do want to share a little bit about how we got our own journey on generative AI in the workplace, and how we are in the company in Amazon and AWS also doing this to make sure we get everyone on this train to drive adoption of Gen AI in the workplace. So you will see a little bit of internal sharing from us as well. But let me come to my first highlight of the day, which is Brittany, you introducing yourself.
Wonderful, wonderful. Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Brittany. I lead our innovation and transformation delivery team. And I'm excited to be here and share some best practices with you. Siggy.
Thank you so much. And I'm so pleased we're working together in the EMEA region on many things, driving innovation with customers, which is a really exciting area, specifically in the age of Gen AI. Now, when I think about adoption of generative AI in the workplace, I think a lot about this image. I'm going to the pub, and next to me is not my colleague, but a robot. Having this hybrid way of working, you found some quite interesting quotes about that, Brittany. Maybe you want to share about that.
I did. So what was really interesting, Siggy, when looking through the research, by year-end 2025, AI agents will attend over 25% of our virtual and hybrid meetings, right? That's a huge and fundamental shift in terms of how we engage. I mean, I think I would prefer a robot counterpart to having you in my meetings.
Okay. We didn't speak about this in SAL, did we? No. But I would prefer on Monday mornings to send a robot to my meetings.
It might be better for me.
Well, there was another one.
By 2028, generative AI will be tightly woven into personal and team productivity, right? And in this instance, generative AI, we'll talk a bit through it later, but will really require oversight, right? So some of these are going to be operating autonomously and on behalf of us. And I think that's a fundamental shift in terms of how we operate.
Yeah, I'm still thinking of my Monday mornings, but let me get back to the presentation. Listening to these quotes, I think a lot about, well, is this now for developers? Is this for architects? So who is benefiting from these trends and these expectations? And a quite interesting statistics from McKinsey shows only 12% of the employees are using Gen AI with a technology background. So you have 88% population in the enterprise to take on the journey. And you will hear us talking a lot about this element. How do we take the rest of the organization, which is not technology savvy, on the journey and get excited about using Gen AI every day? Because productivity is not a single use case. Productivity is the tiny thing sometimes. How do you get into Gen AI and bring your own experiences and power up your own learning journey on the generative AI road? And well, thinking about this non-technical community in the enterprises, let's take an example from the business analysts. And business analysts had a tough time in the past. They were starting a lot with paperwork, and then suddenly SAP came up, data got more accessible, you had powerful elements like Tableaus, Power BI, so elements which are really giving you tools which gave you an ability to crunch data and to digest data. Now, with all the involvement in generative AI, the role of the business analyst is changing. And suddenly you're not talking about where is my spreadsheet and where are my columns and what is the data model I have to have in mind. You're talking about business, what the business analyst should do. And talking about business means the business analyst is asking for a report. And the business analyst then asks for, build me a story about a conversion rate and help me to understand certain mechanics. And then generative AI is bringing a whole report to life, not worrying about where are the data, combining quantitative data with qualitative data. And you will have all these content bringing up. And when I'm thinking about this a little bit going into my past, I found in the past people who could do Excel macros were the heroes in the company. Now, if you think about these tools now available, if you leave part of the organization behind using these tools for productivity, you lose out on productivity. And this is so important to get people acquainted to using these type and starting to trust also the information they bring up here. Brittany, you wanted to interrupt me.
I think what's really interesting, Siggy, in that progression, right, you've seen the business analyst go from a very technical role to one that's actually starting to engage with natural language, right? And that's a fundamental shift, I would say, in terms of how they operate, right? You've got now this business analyst operating in an oversight role, which is very different, right? They curate the content, they understand what's there, what they want to keep, what they want to double down on, and the rest has changed.
Absolutely. Now, this should be a great world, right?
It should.
There should be no reason to be afraid of generative AI. Nevertheless, Brittany?
I think what's really, really interesting, I think a number of you have probably seen this quote by Scott Galloway, right? People for the past year or so have been really worried that AI, and generative AI more specifically, is going to take their job. But no, what Scott Galloway is saying is that someone who understands AI is going to take their job, right? And this is a fundamental shift in terms of us working side by side with generative AI. And I think what it brings to bear, and a lot of what Scott Galloway speaks about, is doubling down on the innate human qualities that we have, right? Creativity, problem solving, the ability to critically reason and question certain things, right? That's what's actually going to accentuate and take us forward. Scott also said something really important. He said that you are the person to take this forward, right? You are the warrior, he called it. And generative AI is everything that's in your toolkit as a warrior, right? So it's there to complement you. It's there to accentuate your everyday business. And the closer we get to it in terms of interfacing with generative AI, the more productive we can be.
To be honest, if I would be a CEO, which I'm unfortunately not, of a company, I would be really passionate about getting my employees on their journey.
Yep.
We wanted to ask the audience some questions, right?
We did. So we got one question here for you, because obviously a lot of this research around generative AI is relatively new and up and coming and changing all the time. We wanted to get an indication in terms of hands, so just bear with me because it's going to be a bit difficult in this format. Of your organizations, how many of you, by show of hands, have board level or C-suite sponsorship for the adoption of generative AI?
That's pretty impressive. I would say 51.2%.
51.2%, yeah.
From these 55%, how many of the sponsors are in IT on C-level? Okay, that's quite a good share still. So you have a lot also of business sponsors, which I think is super important that you bring it to the boardroom on a wider scope. And this leads me to an example I would like to share. And maybe some of you have heard about this from JP Morgan already. JP Morgan did something very smart. They paired, but they call it AI whisperers. And do we have by accident someone from JP Morgan in the
Ooh, yay, we do.
Yeah, yesterday I was told you have 350 participants, so there is a high likelihood. Okay, great, you made it. Now, and what I was really excited about when I was reading this quote from your CEO is about this idea, bringing technical people and pairing them with senior leadership members, taking them on a journey, like a coach on the technology, and making them think about what generative AI can do, and elevating the savviness of how Gen AI can make a difference. And I think this is a very good example how you get your board commitment also on the journey on a wider scale for the adoption.
Yep.
Now, I think there's another question. We had two questions, right?
There's another question for
Let me shoot for it.
So we wanted to get an indication from you today. How many of you have organization-wide initiatives centered around generative AI training and enablement? Can we get a... Right? So I think what's interesting here is...
13.4%.
13.4%. What's really interesting here is while we've got a high level of C-suite and line of business ownership, less attention being paid, Siggy, I think, on the enablement and the training portion, which is so critical.
Which is good, because I hope we can share some insights which will turn it to 85% later on. Now, from the folks who have an organization-wide initiative, how much of you already implemented self-services so that people can get and get into GenAI as a self-service, or how much of this is coached? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, great. Quite curious what you will think about what we're sharing right now. Now, when I was a kid, which is unfortunately a while ago, I loved learning through playing. And I think that's the reason why when we talk about generative AI adoption, playgrounds have such an important role. And playgrounds is a way to get people on learning and adopt technology in a very gamified way, but also in a secure environment where they can't get in trouble with data they're sharing. But this idea of helping people to play again, to adopt technology, I think is a very powerful one. And Brittany, you did a little bit of reading around that, and you found 4 elements why these playgrounds are so cool.
Yeah. So critical thing, I think Siggy's touched on a number of things, right? The importance of playing with technology in order to experiment, experience it, right, and understand it in a fundamentally new way. And I think with generative AI in general, that's been the biggest selling point, right? We've had access to it in our pockets. You know, for those of you who leverage ChatGPT as an example, right, you can interface with this technology in a completely different and unique way. So the first important thing we've seen, Siggy, with the integration of generative AI playground, specifically in a work context, is that it enables innovation. And I've seen this within my role. You know, we have, and we'll introduce later, a number of different generative AI playgrounds that have allowed our colleagues to spin up different applications, right, in an easy and intuitive way, in order to make sense of, you know, how is it we innovate in our day-to-day job. I think what's so integral about this is that these playgrounds have made a seamless interface for users, right? So it becomes a lot more easy without having to understand all the detail behind fine-tuning models and how they set up and the different foundation models. You're able to interface in a quick and easy way. The next important part is accessibility. I think what's so important is being able to share these learnings, right? Making them accessible to different peers so that they can build upon it in different ways, right? And test them from different angles too, right? And provide that feedback. The third thing is the educational element, which I think we've doubled down on in the beginning, right? But there's no better way to become familiar with the technology other than experience it, right? First-hand experience. And then last but not least is integration, right? How do we integrate these tools into our existing workflows, into our existing processes, to make them more efficient and more effective?
Absolutely. And
you actually, Siggy, had a wonderful mental model on this that you shared with me.
Oh, don't raise the expectation too much.
I won't.
But what I would like to double down on is playgrounds help us to imagine new things. We have ideas. Sometimes we have quite funny ideas. We would like to test how generative AI is helping us in that space. Then there's the playground helps us to build that even as a non-technology person. It's about that experimentation. How fast can I build and power up an app in GenAI? And I'm not talking a simple prompt now. I'm talking really on an app which is helping me to do a piece of work I would like to optimize and to get more productive in my company. Now, I think this is the safe part. The interesting bit where I think playground can accelerate is about sharing. And sharing is you build an app, you do your first experiences, you're an executive assistant, and it's quite a great experience also in our company when we see our executive assistants starting to build their own GenAI apps. And then, or you're a salesperson, and then you start sharing them. And suddenly you create a wide amount of applications on the playgrounds other people can pick up on. And the important element about these picking up is then celebration. And if you do a cool thing, you would like other people to know about it. And so what happened in our company is we really got into that move of people starting to test here a little bit, to experiment there a little bit, and then suddenly it became a motion. And a lot of people were exchanging what they were doing on what playground. And we will give you quite deep insight into the playground in a second, but we have not one playground, like kids do want to go to different playgrounds sometimes. And what we did over time, we started with very simple elements. From there, we moved then to playgrounds, which allows you to get richer data integrated. Then other playgrounds which help you to integrate it with some of the productivity applications you're using anyway. All these different playgrounds addressing different elements, and we have, I think, meanwhile, 5 or 6 playgrounds where people in the company can connect to for different tasks and experiment. And this level of experimentation creates a massive amount of examples being shared. Now, we will get to that example element in a second. I think you need to take a seat now because I'm speaking so long,
Go
right?
for it, yes, exactly.
Sorry for that. Now, one of the playgrounds, which is quite popular, I think, in our company, but also with our customers, it's Party Rock. Anyone of you had heard about Party Rock? Okay, this is 3.4%. Okay, good. Hopefully after that session you will love Party Rock. Of course we have Q apps and Bedrock and all that stuff, but Party Rock had 2 purposes. The first purpose is to provide internally for the community a tooling where you could start simply test your ideas and get your first ideas, how valuable is what generative AI is generating for you. The second idea around Party Rock is we made it also available for you guys. So if you leave that meeting, if you leave that session today, you can hop on your phone or your computer, you type in partyrock.aws and you can start playing and testing. And this easy access to the technology, covering the bedrocks and all the good models behind it, was very important to make that successful. And you see it on the quote here on the screen. More than 500,000 applications have been generated by Party Rock. And some of these applications are super tiny, some of them are super complex. And this was really the motion we wanted to get kicked off in the company and also with our customers. Now, there were very meaningful examples, of course, on Party Rock, and I'll show you one.
Describe what you would like your app to do.
And there should be audio, to be honest. There is audio. Okay, good.
Assistant, biker, cocktail party, denim and lace.
I remember that was your favorite one.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
You started to adapt that. I know that. Okay, cool. The whole idea about Party Rock, of course, is you tell the system what you want to build. You share your question. You share the business context you would like to build. And there are of course more sophisticated applications, but just to give you a little bit of an idea how Party Rock is working and how you interact with Party Rock, another example. And so in Party Rock, you generate your app, and then you share with the system. Very simple example here. I would like to go to Europe, a travel planner, and that travel planner, I need to slow down a little bit because I'm speaking faster than the movie is running. Sorry for that. And then a travel planner, of course, should know where I go. It should give me ask me some information on my group, on the community, and the preferences. So let's give it a moment to think. I didn't know I'm such a slow typer, to be honest, but and the group preferences. Now I press the button, generate an app for me. The one disappointing thing I need to tell about our Party Rock playground, it's not a fancy UI interface. It's not the goal of building a fancy UI. It's getting a better feeling about what are the information I can generate and how valuable is the information I can generate. Now, after a while, normally a short while, Party Rock is giving you an overview of input aspects, and you put in, of course, the destination city. I made it a little bit difficult by having 2 adults and 2 teenage girls. Five days. We normally do 2 weeks, but we shorten it down here. And then it's arts, sports, and of course fast food. Now, when you share these preferences with the system, it provides you the travel itinerary. And It gives you a quite detailed view. By the way, anyone has been to Lisbon already? Very nice place. I hope you recognize some of the information is correct. Thank you for the confirmation. And what I like very much is about the dinner at Honorato Hamburgues Artesanes, yeah? Picking up on the fast food element as well. And of course now you suddenly get excited, because imagine you build your own app, your first app, and then you think about how useful is what I get, and then you get surprised by the information and the quality of information. Now, of course, you can then start chatting with the system. What is the best? That was maybe a bit disappointing that McDonald's isn't the typical place to go in Lisbon, but you see, at least it's a very real experience the system is giving you back. Now, of course, this is a very simple way to build something that is not a workplace productivity app, but if you would put that now in the context of travel management for your business, and you add more information because you can also upload documents and that sort of stuff, it suddenly becomes very useful, where a lot of executive assistants, for example, have a hard time to figure out where to send the colleagues and what to figure out information. Now, the important thing about this whole concept of Party Rock, and you see on the top you see snapshot, remix, share and edit. And let me focus on that briefly. The whole idea is you see this app from a colleague. The colleagues have shared the app. So then you can copy this app and remix it. I'm not sure why we say remix to it, but the whole idea is you get into that continuum of 100,000 of apps in your company, in your environment. You remix the app and you add your flavor. So you don't need to start from scratch every time. And this is what I meant about sharing. This whole idea of imagine, build fast, and share the ideas with others. They will refine the idea and it will add new moments and new elements how to work and adopt GenAI. And this whole thing, sometimes I think it's too simple, but sometimes simplicity, oh my God, simplicity works. And it definitely worked in our environment. We hear it from customers as well. Providing this easy way of getting your steps into GenAI and refining it step by step was really a massive booster after hundreds of tons of video trainings and classroom trainings and so on. This got people excited to experiment and to test. Now, I know there are more meaningful applications.
Yes.
And
should we go through another example?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I think what's really interesting, Siggy spoke about earlier, was around applications for executive assistants, right? And what I really wanted to show here with this example was how you can use generative AI to assist you in your own learning path, right? So very simply, again, you can already see the search functionality, right? So searching existing applications that have already been made in Party Rock. Right? If you don't find what you want, right, or you do, you can develop your own application, right? So what we've called it here is obviously Learning Planner. And I think what's really interesting here is just with simple prompts, right, you can understand, I want to understand more about a certain domain, right? Be that, of course, in this instance, generative AI. My current role within the organization is an executive assistant. It automatically helps you spin up, right? Here are a list of resources and useful access to different channels and links and online courses to help you on your journey. What's really interesting is it actually personalizes this learning path to the executive assistant specifically, right? So now you've already got this plan focused on you, focused on the knowledge and different upskilling elements you need to focus on to help you out and specific to your job, right? So that's really, really powerful and a different way of doing it. I think what's really interesting is you can start to tweak this as well, right? So you can get very specific with the prompts, really linking it to, say, for instance, your internal wiki within an organization to make the trainings very, very specific.
Well, let me build a little bit.
Yep.
Let me build a little bit on this. That's a tough one. As you might have noticed, I'm German, so I'm struggling with English. So sorry for that. The interesting bit here is this application was not built by an IT department.
Yeah.
It was I think in this specific case it was a learning manager who wanted to experiment, how can I optimize access, or in HR someone, how can I optimize access to all that content and help people to build that competency. Now what happened is, of course, this is now not a productive application which made it into our HR systems, but it triggered the development of ideas into the system. And it started to, and sometimes you need to get your business users excited. You need to get the buy-in from your business departments. And to get the buy-in from the business departments, this is changing the way they can connect to it. You can show the first examples in minutes. And then people understand that's a very easy way how I can now think about building something more substantial than with the whole environment integration and so on. And just to share a little bit of insights here, for example, we do have that learning planner facility in the company, of course. It was triggered by ideas like this, but we also then took it further. For example, if you have a talk or you listen to a speech, we now use generative AI in HR to automatically generate the knowledge check and the training material. And this was not obvious for the HR community. Yeah, the HR community was very much stuck to standard systems and the systems they knew. But with having these examples, you suddenly excite people. And they started thinking, oh, then we could do more. And this whole idea of content analysis, everyone knows. But to see it in action, different thing. And then they started in a first step to connect their database with learning materials from the company, which you can imagine is quite big in Amazon, and you are drowning in it. And I'm sure some of you are drowning in your learning materials as well. So these small successes, triggering adoption in different departments, bringing it to life. And this is a very important element I think I would really like to build on. Just being curious, because we had some population in the group who were talking about having playgrounds even. Anyone using the playgrounds already to get business users and business departments involved and adopted, or are the playgrounds predominantly used in the IT domain? I know you can't need to do hand raising thing. I need to adjust to that. Okay, so just maybe the first quick question: how many of those who have already playgrounds in place using a similar logic in your company? One, okay, interesting. And I think this is an element to think about. The playground idea is not a genius one. It's a good one, but it's not genius. But how you encourage people to drive these whole usage of playground and go beyond the pure testing. And I think that's where, again, the sharing element comes in. You saw Brittany, or you saw in the movie at the beginning, the typing. You search for. And what do I do? Sometimes if I'm meeting customers and I think about, okay, that would be cool if I could have that use case. I go to our internal party rock system, I search for a specific business context, and quite often I get a use case which has already been implemented. And this is a way where you can bring in that knowledge and that adoption level to the next stage to really excite people. Now, bad news now. We have another movie, another example, which is a bit more sophisticated. And this example we're talking about now is done by a salesperson. And we see a tremendous opportunity in sales for using generative AI. And the salesperson started like the same way, sales, and you see we have a lot of listings already sales related in that internal system. By the way, like in Facebook or LinkedIn, you do see the ratings as well. It's another element to promote. And the whole idea what this person wanted to do is he wanted to simulate customer conversations. They heard about that, it's something which is coming up, and he wanted to benefit from this idea to describe the customer, the product he's going to position, and really simulate a conversation with the customer. And as you see here, the customer who is going to, who is in the conversation is the CTO of a large financial service provider. The product, no surprise, is an advanced generative AI and risk management solution. Fraud analysis. And this is about a cold call to introduce the whole setting. Was a nervous salesperson moving around. There was something he forgot. Risk averse, yeah? Part of the persona description, of course. Scenario context is a cold call, introduce the solution, and common questions and objections. Of course, it's an example. Normally you would put more content in because of the sales guys, you know, of course, more context about your customer. It's security, and is this hallucination element really manageable, or do I get results which are so far from reality? So these are typical concerns. So what you see now coming through this playground is, in the first step, the system generates you a persona description. What are typical attributes for you, for the salesperson? What are typical challenging and buying behavioral elements? And then it comes to the element where you would like to simulate that conversation with that persona. And I think it starts with a fundamental sentence at the beginning, with this fundamental quote. Hello, I would like to, type faster, introduce our new risk analyzer tool. And you forgive us, we're using simple examples here, but of course there is more context behind that. Now, then the response from the customer is, I appreciate your call, but I'm quite busy at the moment. Tell me why I should listen to you, which is not quite normal. A thing can happen. In parallel, the salesperson gets guidance of what he has done right or wrong. Yeah? So you're really helping to make these conversations more targeted, and the system reflects on it. And just to remind you, this sounds like a simple UI, but the tool gives you, sorry, I'm just showing some of the prompts. You can customize the prompts, and you can be very specific on the elements. And then meanwhile, you have the conversation. We have a large customer base with more than 100,000 successful references in your industry. It's not a good sales guide, to be honest, having that conversation. That's a bit too simple how he approaches it. And then the customer responses, blah, blah, blah. So the whole idea behind this is you start applying this playground for your actual work. And now think about, we talked about the JP Morgan example, where whisperers were working with senior managers. One of these whisperers is helping the senior manager or one of the senior BU managers to show how he can improve productivity in his environment by using stuff like that, building that interactive way of raising the application in a short and getting the application in a short while. Just for you to have in mind, this system is not it's a playground, but it's tapping into the full scope of Bedrock and all the foundational models associated to it. So even if it's looking always green, I don't know why we didn't change have now an option to change the color, even if it looks always green, but it gives you a lot of different options how you can tweak, how you can customize. And that's what's happening. You saw at the beginning, you saw in between, you saw this box where you saw the prompt logic. And then people suddenly start saying, okay, this is too simple what I get here. I need to add more information, or I need to tweak the role a little bit better. So for example, just adding here, I'm an experienced sales coach, having worked with many companies in that industry, and training drives a change in the behavior. And then you could add, for example, successful pitches to the document, and so on and so on. So this sort of type of applying technology in a playful way helps you to refine across a whole population of business units the application of GenAI, but also adopting it through playing in a very meaningful and dedicated way. Now, Did you like the examples? 2 thumbs up only? Oh, that's depressing. Okay, I hope there were more. 4 thumbs, okay, well, we count that in. Thank you. Now, there's more, of course, about just playing. And how do you frame now the whole way of driving this adoption in the company? And one element I would like to touch on is about balance a bottom-up and top-down approach. This sounds very simple, but the playgrounds give you an excellent opportunity to drive crowdsourcing and to crowdsource a lot of the intelligence and the experience in an organization. But you still need to have a management approach which is helping to drive that. And the reason why I'm saying this is I was talking to customers during the reInvent and they said, oh, we have playgrounds, but they are not used. So I think it's important, and there is a trap I would like to share. One of the traps when you try to get Gen AI adoption from the field, from the crowd, is that people think my idea is not good enough. I will not share it with my manager, or I do not want to share it with colleagues. So I think this is a very important element in the whole communication to make sure that people understand every idea is okay. Idea will be taken into account. It will be fostered. It can be changed. It can be adjusted. But this is a management communication. People need to hear it from the management. We want you to play. We want you to come up with these ideas and show us and share it. So this top-down and bottom-up approach, I think, really needs to get next to each other. The other element, it's my box, right? The next one.
You can take it. Go
it's
for
my
it.
box still.
I can go for it, or you can go for it. Go for
I'm
it.
still happy.
Go for it.
I take it. We frame generative AI as the enabler of human potential. And why is this so important? Imagine now the first example, sophisticated travel planning for Lisbon. One executive assistant is showing it to her colleague, and they might have completely different reactions to it. One assistant says, wow, I'm now so much faster and I can do better things and different things. The other says, oh, my job is in danger, because if the system can do that, I'm in trouble. So I think with all these type of experimentation, it's again coming back to the management communication to re-emphasize. We want as a company to grow as a whole. And I think this is what this adoption discussion is about. If you have genius single use cases driving your productivity in workflow management, great. But the productivity with the 88% is much bigger. And having this constant communication, how you frame generative AI, is helping us as a company to become more competitive, to be more effective. It's not about replacing their job. Because on one hand, it replaces your job, potentially, but it also helps you to learn new skills. And I think this is another element. I hope you share my view here.
Yep, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
I'm exhausted now. I will go sit down.
I think that leads us to the next point, right? So key to any successful change management initiative is obviously understanding where things go wrong, right? And I think this is one of the underlooked elements that we see with regards to Gen AI in general, is a lot of leaders want to step away when there's resistance, right? But what's critical in this instance is to get closer to the resistance, to understand why it's happening, right? Why are people either, one, not getting value from this application, or two, not finding a use for it in their day-to-day operations and day-to-day life. So what's critical is to get close to that resistance and then to scale what works. Right, so you've probably heard, and I've been chatting with a number of customers here at reInvent too, around a center of excellence, right? How do we foster this center of excellence that gets closer to what of these generative AI applications is actually leading to tangible business value for us? Where should we scale investment? And where should we double down on versus which?
May I ask a minute from you?
Yeah.
Because I think the center of excellence is an excellent point, Brittany. We know it from the cloud. We built center of excellences when we were moving to the cloud. So how many of you in your companies do have these center of excellences, that team or that unit where people can pick up the phone or send a message to if they have questions? Not too many, okay. I stopped guessing. 33?
Yeah.
I say 25. Anyway. Okay. So I think this is a very important element as well in the whole setting of driving the adoption, that you know who to talk to if I have questions, if I have doubts, or if I want to even share something cool. Sorry for that.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. I think there's one other integral point I wanted to raise today, and you probably saw it from a bunch of the Party Rock use cases and examples, right, is the closer you get to it, the more you figure out that this just provides us a baseline, right? In a lot of the examples, it provided a good output, right, that probably raised the bar to a certain extent in terms of initial thinking around a subject or topic. But what becomes so critical, again, back to that quote earlier on this today, is the human skills, right? What are those soft skills, the creativity, the problem solving, the critical reasoning that we can add to generative AI in order to accelerate the way forward? And then rewarding this curiosity, right? I think that's a really important part, Siggy. When you're sharing these applications, speaking to your peers and your colleagues around.
But before we talk about rewards, let's talk a little bit again about resistance.
Yeah.
And give me some space, please. It's a tiny space.
Tiny. We can't go over here.
But we didn't fall off yet.
Yeah, you almost.
Okay. So the understanding resistance, again, trying to make you work here. Do you have regular conversations? Do you capture why some departments are very heavily investing and driving it, the Excel macro heroes from the past, and others are not? Is there any way you capture that in your organization? Maybe to think about.
Yeah.
Because fostering, and it comes back to coaches, evangelists, you implement in teams. We heard about, I don't want to stress JP Morgan too much, which was working with the senior management, but this is the same on a team level, where are you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. On a team level, on a department level, to have these people grouped into communities, giving you the voice of the crowd in a good way. Because again, productivity of 88%, you do not gain from single use cases. You need to get people thinking about it. How can I improve my day-to-day work processes every time and so on? Now, you were touching on experiment and experience and experiment. You would like to continue on that?
No, go for it.
Oh my God, you let me work. Now, when I heard about these examples, we have playgrounds, but we are not using them. Something which connected to our Amazon culture, and some of you might have heard about Amazon with 16 leadership principles, 16, I hope, yeah, 16, good. Okay, I was trying to invent a new one. We have two leadership principles. One is invent and simplify, and another one is learn and be curious. So this is part of our reward system. When you have a performance dialogue in the Amazon world, people look at your behavior in terms of how do you build new skills? How much time did you invest to build new skills? Where did you simplify a process? And I think this is another element to get the workforce moving, to get the people thinking about how can it contribute to productivity. In the past, and stop me if that's too simple, in the past, to get something changing, you had to have quite a good IT skill to think about how can that impact the workflow, or how can I do a better reporting, whatever system. With generative AI, you can experiment more easily. And you can bring this curiosity and this experimentation into your personal performance, into your personal productivity. But then as a company, you also need to communicate. We want you to spend time on that. We want you to give the freedom to experiment. And if you have built 2, 3, 4 new ideas through using playgrounds as an example, this will be rewarded. I think this is a bit of a shift in thinking also how we manage workforces and how we try to get workforces activated around this idea.
Yeah.
Sorry for my long
No problem, no problem. So 2 more important elements, I think. The one is we wanted to leave you with is measure what matters, right? And a lot of the customers we speak to, you know, they've got this board mandate to adopt generative AI, and it's a big push, right, from the top down. But what's really critical is how are we seeing value from generative AI? How is it changing our day-to-day operations and our day-to-day jobs? And how is it making us more productive? And in what ways, right? So really making sure we pay special attention to measuring not the technology per se in the adoption, right, but the output of what it produces, which is so critical for all employees.
But I think it's not only about the output. We were talking a little bit about the trap of expectation. So if you only go for Gen AI applications and adoption, when you have a hard business value mapped to it, it will make people shy away because they think it's not good enough. I can't prove the business case. We want the opposite. We want people to do silly things in a safe playground to come up with cool ideas or with the next idea. Now, it's not only about measuring, sorry to say that, the effectiveness, it's also about measuring always sounds like control, understanding why do I have in southern China, in my company, much more ideas generated and applications coming up on generative AI than in, I take that German blame now, than in Bavaria, in Germany. And this is also about understanding, are there maybe cultural differences? Are there maybe other elements from the management style which will people go for it, experiment, or not? So understanding this, you know, when we had social media in the enterprise, we were looking into what teams are communicating more, what teams are communicating less, where do we have breaches. I think this level of measurement gives you an additional value to understand how you can take your workforce on the journey. I saw some people nodding. I hope it made sense to you. More people nodding. Thank you for that. Okay. Brittany.
Last but not least, I think there were two critical elements we got to and touched on a bit. One is change management and the other is ethics, right? And oftentimes within large change programs, within organizations, we kind of view this as separate kind of work streams, right? Push them to the side and get to them later. But what's become really important, and if I use the simple example of the playground, is that you actually embed guardrails and transparency from the onset, right? So you're really empowering employees to understand when I'm interacting with these models, you know, what is the safety zone? What is the buffer? What can I expect to see? What can I not expect to see? And this level of transparency for us creates a higher threshold in terms of the overall organizational understanding of what's required, right? Both from a risk and a compliance perspective.
And it was for us internally a very important element a very simple thing. When you open our internal playground, of course, it's important because you deal with company data sometimes, there's a very detailed description what you may do and what you may not do. Very simple, one page, which is updated regularly to make sure you feel safe on the playground. And I guess the other element, of course, the ethic element is included in that in terms of what type of applications can you go for. And I think we all know where we are heading. There can also sometimes be some app use in creating apps which might not be correct in the overall work environment. Now, maybe wrapping up a little bit.
Yes.
I think, first of all, what we would like to get across is generative AI adoption at scale is not an IT job. And you shouldn't rely on the IT specialists to do it. Maybe a good or a bad message how you look into it, because it is a way to activate the whole organization. And this means about excitement. Excitement ideally is coming from management. Excitement is coming from people talking and sharing about what they do day to day on generative AI. That's the reason why the playground idea is so important. And last but not least, it's also thinking about your understanding what is happening with this. And the playground gives you a lot of data. It gives you a lot of insights where you can understand how people are using this and bringing this together. Now, I think we are almost done, right?
We are almost done. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I hope we gave you some ideas and insights and the examples resonated. What we would like to encourage you as well is, Brittany and I from the innovation team, and we are we are working quite hard every day to achieve happier customers for your customers, how to optimize the operation, get healthier operations, and make a business stronger through data, through generative AI. So it's our day-to-day work when we work with business users. And if you would like to learn more about that, there's a whole series of offerings where where Amazon is sharing how we are doing things. We have certain processes working backwards and mechanisms, how we take you through that innovation journey, just to do a little bit advertising here, to inspire you also to expand the conversation with us. And of course there is also a whole series about learning more about innovation at Amazon. And some of these innovation principles and leadership principles map also very much how you drive generative AI in your organization. Because at the very end, the adoption at scale is a cultural change. It's not a tech change. It's a cultural change, how you make people feel comfortable, curious, excited to drive that adoption. That would always be my last, it was my last statement.
Yeah,
I left one for you, more advertising.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. One more thing. It would be remiss of me not to share with you, some of my colleagues are hosting some other talk tracks throughout the day today. Really interesting coming up next, actually, in this very room. So we thought we'd give these to you as an opportunity to join in on some more innovation work tracks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Siggy.
Thank you so much for listening so silently to us. It's always an interesting experience. Thank you very much.